Today we're going to be talking all about planning for 2026 digital marketing plan. So we're going to be going through all the different possibilities for digital marketing, basically getting clear on what we want to do, what we want to do differently, and yeah, come up with some actionable steps to hit the goals that we set, and really take advantage of the new year and have a great year. So what we're going to be covering today, we're going to set goals, talk about websites, we're going to talk about how to optimize those, how to optimize for SEO. We'll talk about Google pay per click, meta ads, social media, and then we're going to create like an actual custom action plan so to hit exactly what you're going after. And then we also got some bonus materials to show basically how to calculate your marketing budget for 2026. So rather than just developing a plan or saying you want this, we'll actually be able to calculate it down to what the revenue is, how many leads it'll take to get there, your conversion percentage, all that stuff. So we have some spreadsheets that'll help you calculate that too. We created a workbook. Want to make sure nobody has issues with it, but if you want to scan this QR code, you'll be able to access this workbook, and it'll allow you to basically scan and create a copy of it. So you'll be able to follow along as we go through here. It'll have a structure that shows you how you can set your goals, and all the different changes you want to make, things like that. So just be sure to scan that QR code and make a copy of that document, and then I'll just give you a couple minutes to do that. All right. So if you're wondering who I am, I see some familiar names on here, but there's some I haven't seen. So if you've never been on one of these webinars or not sure who I am, name's Alex Danner. I'm the owner and founder of Fence and Deck Marketers. And ever since the beginning with Fence and Deck Marketers, our whole mission was to want to be the agency that provided the most free quality content, to the industry. And that's what we do. So we do obviously these webinars. We also have a podcast, the Fence and Deck Mastery podcast. That is really good content. A lot of great guests that come on there. I wrote the best known fence and deck contractor. We do a lot of social media, and we're on part of AFA and NADRA, and I'm actually part of the NADRA education committee as well. So a lot of fun stuff we're working on there. And then we do a lot of speaking engagements and things at the different association conferences. That's at Deck Expo, and we were there again this year. If we saw you there, you tried to pull up our hope it was fun. All right, so we want to make sure that we're actually setting clear goals, because I think everybody's probably guilty of this. You just kind of have an idea of what you want to make for the year. You see what you made for this year, and you're like, yeah, that'd be great if I went from 1 million to 1.5 or 1 to 2 million, but that's kind of where it ends. You're not sitting down and thinking about how you actually get there. You're just kind of hoping for the best, or doing things the same and hoping for a different result. So what we want to do is set clear goals and be calculated about this. So set those clear goals so that you know exactly what you want to do, and then you can kind of reverse engineer it to actually hit them. See what kind of marketing is needed, what kind of leads and things like that. All right. So, what I always like to say is, if you're not setting goals, you're kind of like this boat here, the sailboat without a sail. You're just kind of drifting around. You're not doing anything that's going to make it very likely that you're going to hit your goal. You're just kind of hoping. So, once you actually get that sail, you put a sail on a sailboat, that's when you start to get that momentum. That's what's going to help you carry you forward into the new year and hit those goals. And when you have those clear goals set, your team is on the same page. You write them down, you go back to them, you consistently keep track of them throughout the year. You'll be able to track that progress and realize if you're behind schedule, ahead of schedule, anything like that. But if you're not recording it, you're not writing it down, it's going to have a lot of issues there. So what we want to do, well, first I want to show you this. So this is actually a study that really just changed my life, because when I first heard it, it just kind of blew me away. But there was a 1979 Harvard study, and they interviewed graduates, and basically of those graduates, 84% of them had no specific goals. 13% of them had goals, but they were not written down. And then 3% had clear written goals and plans to accomplish them. And out of those results, so the 13% of the class who had goals, but they were earning on average twice as much as the 84% that had no goals at all. But the one that really stands out is the 3% who had clear written goals were earning on average 10 times as much as the other 97% put together. So that small percentage of people that are actually writing down their goals, actually following it around, really is a game changer. And I can attest to this too. Once we started EOS, if anybody's heard of that, we write down our goals every year. We have quarterly goals too. But once we started writing that down, we can have a clear picture of what needs to get done and kind of track our progress to see how we're doing throughout the year. And having that game plan is extremely important. And a study like this really puts it in perspective. Okay, so I hope everyone has the workbook. If not, just copy that link to Matilde sent. But what I want to do is write down your current snapshot. So putting down your revenue for 2025, what you're on pace for. So put that revenue number. I want to also write down the typical number of jobs you run every month. And then the other key metrics, put down your average ticket price, your closing percentage in the field, and then also the number of trucks, number of crews, whatever you'd like there. I'll give you a couple minutes to jot all that down. The next thing, and let me know if you want me to go back to that slide if you need to see it, but the next thing we want to do is talk about the goals. So your annual target for 2026. I want to know how many crews, how many trucks you want to have. I want to know if there's any crucial new hires, like maybe a project manager, a salesperson, assistant, admin, something like that. Any big changes you're thinking of making, like maybe you're getting a showroom or, getting an answering service. If you're making any big changes to the company, maybe rebranding. Oh, that's not the best time to do it now, but any like major changes you're planning to make. And then the most critical of all these is thinking about why. So why you want to actually hit it, because like I was saying in the beginning, if you're just saying I want to go to 1 to 1.5 and you had a pretty good year, you're living comfortably, you have your bills paid for, things like that, it's probably not going to be enough to go from 1 to 1.5 off of just that. So, having things that you want to do, like maybe you want to have more time with family, you want to get it completely out of the sales role. So that way you don't have to deal with that. You have more time with family. Maybe you want to buy a new house, or you want to get a new truck, or take the whole family on vacation. Really think about what at the end of the year, if you're able to do with your whatever that goal may be, would be a great year. Something that you'd like to do that would more something, I guess, more fun or meaningful to you. So think about that and what you'd like to accomplish for the new year for that. Now we kind of know what we did this year. We know where we're going to end up, or at least close, with only 15 days left in the year. But we want to think about, the next years and how we're going to hit that goal, those goals that we just set. So we're going to talk about the marketing strategy. I'm going to give you a lot of different ways to improve your marketing. I'm going to show you kind of best cases for each, and we'll go through them individually. So just to give you an overview of basically the digital domination services that we recommend and the ones that we see the best results with. This is kind of like our hierarchy of them too. So the website, SEO, Google ads, local services ads, which are much better for fencing than decking, by the way. And then you have your meta ads, and then you have your organic social media posts. So those are the ones that we recommend digitally to really grow your business. We'll go through each one of these individually. All right. So this is a timeline because we get this a lot. What should you do first, and kind of the timeline of digital marketing. So depends on the size of your company. If you're around 0 to 500,000, you absolutely need to have a Google business profile. You need to be getting reviews. You need to have some kind of website, and then you could do some social media, posting yourself, things like that. Once you get to 500 to a million, that's when I recommend, really improving your website, getting something nicely made, something that's built for SEO, and then doing some monthly SEO to build that. That should be something, as long as you're in a good area, to get you to 1 million for sure, as long as it's set up properly. Then once you get over, 1 to 2 million, that's when the Google ads start to be more affordable, because they are expensive. So you're running Google ads between 1 and 2. between 2 and 3 million, that's when Facebook ads or meta ads is what I would recommend bringing into the picture, and really focusing on branding more, and just letting everyone in your area know who you are and what you're about. Once you get to that 3 million mark, that's when social media, like taking that a little bit more seriously, can be a good idea. Usually getting someone internally that can help create this content. But if you're paying for someone internally, it's going to be expensive to pay for that salary. So that's why I put it up there. But also, social media in general is not going to give like those direct uh, big pile of leads. It's more of kind of staying top of mind, but it is a good idea. It's just what I really save to the end. Okay, so before we get into like the specifics of each one, I'm just curious what everybody here thinks that they need to focus on, before I go into all the strategies. So, coming into this, is there anything that like is really top of mind in terms of what you need to fix or what you need to improve or what you need to start or remove? So write down, and if you can put in the chat if you want to, like, where do you think right now you need to focus most? Like, where do you think you're lacking? And yeah, love if someone can put some stuff in the chat too, see what you're thinking. Ways to remarket to previous customers, like that. Meta ads, nice. Google reviews, that's a big one. Convince owners that trucks should be wrapped. All right. Nice. Reviews. Okay, cool. Producing content for posting. All right. All right, cool. The what we're going to start with, how to prevent negative reviews. All right. We're going to start with the website. So reason we start with it is because it is the hub of all your foundation. All of your marketing, because basically the website is like the foundation. If you're marketing, just like, basically having the right foundation for a deck, if it doesn't matter if you put on nice new TimberTech or decorators boards, replace wood with those. If the whole foundation's messed up, the footings aren't right, it's still going to come crashing down. It doesn't matter how pretty it looks, if it's going to collapse. So with your marketing, there's no point in doing a lot of digital marketing if you don't have a good website, because everybody's going to find it. And it's not just digitally either. Say you did billboards or flyers, people are still going to be looking at your website to see what you're about, see if it looks good. They're going to look at your Google reviews too. So you need to make sure that website stands out and looks better than your competition. So absolutely need to make sure this is in order. And here are just some stats to kind of let you know the importance. So 75% of homeowners do some level of online research. 94% of website first impressions are design related. So judging a book by its cover, people are going to, if they see a really bad website, they're going to just assume that you're less, you produce less quality than other companies from that fact alone. And then 38% of visitors abandon sites with poor design. So a lot of people just don't like it. Honestly, I'm somebody like that, but I know I'm a little bit biased since I'm in the industry. But, if the website's just awful, it's hard to use, people are just very impatient. They're going to hop off and find somebody else. So you got to make sure that website's in order. And this is kind of the checklist to make sure the website's in good standing. So if you don't have a mobile friendly website, you got to fix that. Most searches and traffic is coming from mobile. So you're missing out on over half of the traffic if you don't. Images and videos, that's hugely important. Make sure you're doing that consistently. Make sure you put the contact forms on every page, because some people can't call you. They want to reach out through a form. So make sure it's easily to find that. And then testimonial widgets. So you want to use a widget and show off those Google reviews that you have, bring them onto the website. The name, the address, and phone number, put that in the footer. Make sure that phone number is nice and big. You don't want to hide it and keep it in the top right corner with a really small font. You want to make sure that's really big, bold font, and you want to make sure it's always following you around. Service pages. So you want to think about all the services you offer, and figure out what people are searching in your area. Make sure you have pages for each of those. I'll give you more examples of that here in a second. And then each page needs to have, what we do, 700 words or more of content. So it's not enough to just have a service page for decks or composite decking and it just have one small paragraph. Like it's got to be a page that's optimized for those keywords. The city pages, those are important too. So making a separate page for every city that you work in. When we do it, we create 20 to 30 right in the beginning. An about us page, crucial, very overlooked, but you want to see people want to see who's behind the company, and they're going to look at and want to see, who's behind this company, who they are, who's the owner. So putting good pictures of your staff, at the very least, a good picture of the owner. You can put family pictures in there. It doesn't necessarily have to be a branded one, but it should look, like a friendly picture, someone that'd be good to work with. And then you got to make sure it's fast. So if your website's slow, you can run these two tests here, page speed insights or GT metrics. Google will rank you lower if your website's slow, but people will also just get kind of fed up with it. They'll want to keep moving on. All right. All right. So to give you some like scenarios basically with this, I want to show you because a lot of websites aren't built to convert. They're just kind of set up. They're not built to like actually turn people that visit the site into actual leads. So it's really important to set a website up for conversion. And to show that, this is a great example. So say you had 500 visitors every month to your website and 5% of those people converted. That was 25 leads. And say you closed at 30%. So that would mean 7 jobs. And just as an example, say you made 5,000 average profit. So $35,000 a month off 7 jobs. That's what you made in profit. However, so if say you had a website that was built right, it had those big phone numbers, it had testimonials, it had the right service pages, about us page, all those things we covered, those are going to convert much better. And, making sure also there's call to actions, you should make it clear how people reach out to you. But if you have all of that, you can drastically increase your conversion. It's something we've seen many times. So say you went from 5 to 15%. That would be 75 calls, same conversion rate, except 22%. So you just updated the website, built it for conversions. Um, so right from the start, it's something you can see a big jump in. So in this case, it would be the same profit, but instead 22 jobs at 5,000 profit, that's 110,000. So this is an exercise that you really want to think about hard because if your website's not set up properly, you could rebuild it. And just from rebuilding it, could drastically improve, your overall lead flow, very quickly. And we've seen that when clients come to us and their websites haven't been updated in a very long time. We've even built websites in the past where you just updated the design and just from that alone, they started getting more jobs even without doing SEO on top of it. Just to give you kind of an idea of some things that are, some good practices. So the big phone number, this is hugely important. You don't want to hide it up here, use this tiny font. It should be very evident. And as you scroll through, this is the actual website. You can see there's things like contact forms. It shows their services, things like that. Testimonial widgets here. You can see what companies they use. In this case, they're certified pros with decorators and they use Fortress. So all of these things are great to add to each page because those are just more proof that you are a good company and you know what you're doing. So you've got to make sure you're looking at your website and seeing that. And also a common one is the header disappears. So you want to make sure it's following you around no matter where you go. So you make it painfully easy for someone to contact you. Just an example here of like the about us page, a team picture. You could bring, just anybody that's handy with a phone, just get the lighting right. You could get a professional too, but get some team pictures. That's going to help a lot more than you would think too. Okay. So we talked about the websites, SEO websites, they're all kind of tied together, but I'm just curious what everyone thinks because AI is a big deal now. It's not going anywhere. So I'm just curious, put a 1 in the chat if you think SEO is as important as ever. Put a 2 in the chat if you think it's less important, because of one reason or another or AI. It is absolutely true that AI is coming in and it's making causing a lot of chaos. But What we've seen is that the vast majority of people still come through Google, and we follow a lot of sources and stuff. Basically people that are very involved in the industry, and one of them is Neil Patel. If anybody's ever heard of him, he's like the one of the biggest digital marketing guys that I know of, and he did a study that said people that have paid ChatGPT subscriptions, when they're looking for commercial searches like a deck or a fence, 85% of the time they're still going to Google to find that. So although we do have AI and it's something we account for, it's something you do need to account for. As of right now, for anything commercial related, Google is still the overwhelming favorite. But again, you need to make sure you are accounting for AI as well when you go through this. When somebody's looking for a service provider, you already heard 85 if they have AI. If they don't or don't have a paid subscription, 87% is the amount of people that are going to Google when they're looking for a service provider. So fencing, decking, 87% of the time, that's when they're going to Google. Once they get to Google, these are the different ways that they can show up. So the ads here, the local services ads, which again, these are much better for fencing than decking. The Google pay-per-click ads, that's going to be 30% of all the people of that 87% go to the ads. 45% go to this orange section here. This is called the map pack. So 45% of people are going there. And the green section, this is all about your website. 25% of people go here. So to rank in the green section, you have to have an optimized website, build backlinks, things like that. To get in the map pack, you have to do SEO. You have to optimize your Google listing, and your website also plays a big role. Reviews are a big piece too, and location. So to get there, you kind of have to combine both of those. And then 30% up here, you just have to pay for it basically. So paying to get up to the top. So a big piece, we're talking about SEO. To get into these sections, the map pack, the website results at 70%. That's going to be using SEO. So to get there, that's how you actually get into these sections, is by doing SEO. All right. So I was talking about the websites earlier and having separate pages for each service. So this is a really critical step and something that's often overlooked in your area. So, well, take a step back. This list here is a total search volume for each of these keywords on Google every month in the US. So this is how many times people are typing in pergola, composite decking, privacy screen in the US. So it's a lot of people. And each one of these should be separately handled on your website. So if you can tell that people are searching in your area, and you can tell the search volume for just your area for each of these keywords, so you know what people are actively searching. But as an example, say that you do louvered pergolas. Basically, if you are a building louvered pergolas and you have a separate page for it and your competitor doesn't, that's going to be much more likely that you're going to rank because you have that designated page, and what Google wants to show is the most similar to what they're searching. So if Google sees a page that you have and it says all about louvered pergolas, it's in the header, you have images, all of that, they're going to say, okay, well, this is closer to the search. Where people make a big mistake is, one, they might have a services page that just has everything on it, just one page that has all the services, or they don't go into enough detail. They might have one page for decks, or maybe a one page for outdoor living. But instead of having one page for decks, you should be talking about these additional things on here, like pool decks or deck repair if you're doing that, composite decking. So you want to have a website that's comprehensive, that reflects what people are looking for. Because if you know somebody's searching that, why wouldn't you want to have a page that closely matches what they're looking for? So think about how many pages you have and see if there's any room for improvement. Put a 1 in the chat if you are already doing this, you feel pretty comfortable with like the number of pages you have, and then put a 2 if you think you need more pages to reflect these keywords. Okay, a lot of 2s working on it currently. Great. Yeah, you're definitely not alone. Most people have that issue. You just want to make sure you know what people are searching in your area, what the popular keywords are, and then build those keywords for that. That's going to help out a lot too. Okay, so to optimize for on page, so basically on page is the website, like how you optimize your website. You want to make sure, like we talked about earlier, the user experience, all of that's really nice. Using multimedia, like putting videos on there, is a great idea. Pages for each of your services, the cities, making sure that content's unique. You don't want to duplicate the content and just change out a couple of words. It should be all unique content. Putting that keyword in the title in H1. So if it's a pool decks page or a metal fence page, make sure that's in the title and the H1 on the website. The meta description is kind of what's displayed on Google, so you can update that. That's a little bit more in the weeds. Put the name, the address, and phone number in the footer, and then ongoing content. So once you build out the service pages, the city pages, that's when you want to start doing consistent content, creating blogs, and that's what Google wants to see. Sites that are being updated, and then also make sure you're focusing on the page speed. Okay, so I wanted to tell you a story about a client that SEO is the base of everything we do. Like you absolutely should be doing SEO regardless. So this is a client that is actually, you can see right here, they're in Tennessee. When they came to us, they had a website that they built themselves and just weren't really ranking, weren't getting results. In his case, he was kind of doing a home office in on the outskirts of any major city, so he wasn't getting much traction. So we had a conversation, where's the opportunity? He said, Franklin, Tennessee. So we actually helped him find an office in Franklin, Tennessee, and redid the website, started doing SEO. And that's when things just completely changed. We weren't running ads of any sort, doing social media. It was just the website and SEO. So once we did that, he started around $2 million in decks. And then fast forward 2 years, on pace for 4 million. So being in the right area, we did have to emphasize reviews. I know a lot of people are talking about reviews. You absolutely need to get those consistently. It's the best time and money you can spend if you just completely dominate on reviews. But doing that, having the right location, and having an optimized website is what really opened up a lot of things. And, that alone is going to be a really big game changer for doing it consistently. So you want to think about that. You want to look at your Google listing. You want to make sure you're showing your address on there. You don't want to hide the address, but you want to make sure that you are located near your target areas. Because if you're not, it's a really big problem. It's really going to limit you. So think about that, and if you can move to help yourself out. So yes, SEO still does matter. And just to give you an idea too, with Google, because it has its own AI, not just ChatGPT and all these other language models. When you search on Google, anything commercially related, at least for now. So like, deck builder near me, those keywords we're looking at, most of those don't trigger the AI. The AI is triggered when they're searching more specific things like, asking longer phrase searches, like asking for more of an explanation, that kind of thing is when it triggers it. So for now, Google even shows the map pack, the website results like that. All right. So the Google map pack, I was just talking about that. You need to figure this out and really be careful about it, because if you're not located where you want, like say on this map here, I know Ellicott City is a good area. And say you're up here, Sunscape builders, they're sitting up here, but they want to be in Ellicott City. Or maybe they just want to be near this little patch here of Sykesville. If you're located too far away, I would say over 10 miles, you really should think about moving your office to the dead center of where you want to go. Like think about the best areas and draw a 10-mile radius around it and try to get an office in there, because that change alone can really, really help you. Now, these are just some things to basically improve your Google listing. So the right categories, this is a really, really important one and something that can make a big change right away. So when you look at the categories. Like for example, um, if you go into your Google listing, your Google business profile, you'll be able to see the categories. You want to make sure that primary category is set to whatever you want most. So if you're a deck builder and you want decks the most, it should be set to deck builder. Fencing, same thing, fence contractor. Um, that alone is a big deal. Sometimes we see businesses that have like general contractor because you do decks and then basements and kitchens and all this stuff. But that's a really big problem because you won't ever rank as well, especially compared to other people that have that primary category set. Then you can add the secondary categories. If you do fences and decks, just put the primary as the main one, and then the secondary can be everything else you do. You want to make sure that address is shown. That's another huge one. Do not set it up as a service area business. You want to use a real address. Get to at least 30 reviews. That's just kind of a sweet spot, but in the end, it's going to depend on your market. So if you have a lot more reviews, um, if you have competitors that have 100 reviews, 30 is not going to cut it. You want to make sure you're doing that. And regardless, you want to do whatever you can to be that top person there. We're going to talk responding to reviews, making sure even if it's a bad one, try to get those taken down. But make sure you're responding to those nicely, adding all your services, add all the services as products too. And then Google Business Profile posts, doing those each month. Um, Adding images, doing that consistently is a good idea. And then a little hack here, the hours of operation, the later you're open, the better. So say you have current hours that are 9 to 5, but you have a competitor that's open till 8. Even if you're doing better SEO than them, if a client or a homeowner contacts you at like 6:30, even if you're doing better SEO during your working hours, that person that's open later will likely outrank you just because they have the better hours, because Google doesn't want to show closed businesses. So you should really think about expanding those hours to do better there, get better reach. Okay. Next, I want to talk about pay-per-click, which is pretty hotly contested or debated topic here. So or actually type in PPC if you're currently running pay-per-click ads. Put that in the chat. So the pros of it, it's a way to pay to the top. You don't have to wait for like SEO, which can take, depending on your situation, 6 months, 9 months. I mean, if you're brand new, it could take even longer than that. But it is a great way to just get started and get running. It can have a very far reach. There's no real limitation there as long as you're willing to go to where the homeowner is. Overall, unlimited scalability. You can just keep scaling them up and up. You can control the budget, although it can be difficult, but you can control it as long as you're doing correctly. And then as long as you're tracking things correctly, you can track your ROI, which can be a really tough one. Some people aren't tracking them consistently or tracking if it was an actual lead versus like a click on the website or something like that, or on the landing page. The cons. So most people are skipping it. If you remember that drawing or that picture earlier, 70% of people do skip the ads. Can absolutely be expensive, and most of the time it is. And you basically have to pay Google to keep your rankings. If you stop paying Google, your rankings just disappear. But they are very complicated. They are a great way to burn money if you're not careful. So having someone that really knows what they're doing can be tricky. Is really important, because if you're not really sure how to do it, that's when you can run into all kinds of problems. All right, so these are why I see them fail the most. The majority of people are not running Google pay-per-click ads to a landing page or something that's custom to whatever the ad is. So what most people do, say it was a deck builder, and you're trying to run, or say you're a deck builder, but you do other services. Maybe you do fencing or basement, something like that, and you send everybody the homepage. So say you wanted to rank for deck installation or composite decking, something like that. If they click, or if they type that in, they see your ad, they go to your homepage, your website, they're likely going to be somewhat confused because it's not going to match exactly what they typed in. It's not going to be specific to whatever they typed in. That's where people get into a lot of trouble, is by not making an experience that matches the ads. So a big keyword that gets a lot of results is deck builder. deck construction or deck company and deck contractor. So when you set that up, you want to make sure it's going to a page that's going to make sense why they landed on that landing page. You want to make sure it's talking about that specific keyword on there and it has the right things on the page to really get them to sell. And I'm going to show you an example of a landing page to see, some things that really should be included. Um, Also, one ad group, not separating the ad groups depending on the service. This specific text and landing pages, that's what I was talking about, making sure the ads, whatever text you're using in the ad, it matches the landing page. So it should be a whole, seamless experience. They see the text, it's talking about something that matches their keyword, then it goes to a landing page that's talking about that specifically. If that's not matching and that entire flow is off, like people are going to be like, why did I go to this page? It doesn't make any sense. So you want to be as close to exact as possible. Call to actions are a big one too. Having making it very clear how they contact you. You'll see an example here in a second, kind of how we do that. But you don't want anyone to guess how to reach out to you. You want to make it really clear how they should find you, and you can kind of point people in the direction of where you want them to go, just based off of the formatting of the landing page. Okay. Just to give you an idea, we spent a lot of time, and just kind of as a little bonus, um, we spent a ton of time on perfecting landing pages. I mean, nothing's ever perfect. We still test it, but we've taken a lot of different tests over the years, and this is a landing page that has worked really well. So, this would be for trying to rank for, fence company, fence builder near me, something like that. What you want to do is make sure that title matches what the keyword is. That's a big piece of it. You want to show off good reviews to show how amazing you are. Having some kind of summary, a contact form. You'll see that this big phone number is blinking. I like to do that because it's very obvious. That's what you want them to do. And whenever they're ready, they have a clear way to do that. You just don't want them to click off onto other pages. You want them to stay here, and you want to give them everything they need on this one page. So testimonials, so they can see your Google reviews, what's unique about you, your workmanship warranty, if you have financing, your experience, all that stuff. Just like on landing pages, you want to have a picture of the owner or the team. You can be flexible there. You want to talk about what you can do, which types of materials you have, what it's like to get started, the process, the areas that you go after, and then of course a lot of pictures. Showing off the jobs that you've done. So having these things are critical because it answers a lot of the questions people typically have. Um, but the big thing is no matter where they are on the page, they know how to reach you. You don't want them guessing. So you can see the free estimate button follows them around too. So just an example of one. And to give you an idea of just some real results. So this is a client. This is 30 days of leads. So about 3,000 in ad spend. Pay-per-click leads, 27, 110 cost per lead. Conversion rates around 20%. And then, these are the clicks, impressions, all those things. So it depends if it's fencing or decking, like what the cost per lead should be. This is pretty solid these days. The costs have gone up dramatically. So overall, it's a pretty solid number for cost per lead. With decks, it tends to be even higher, in the 200s. They're also just higher ticket, more costly. But usually at a minimum of 3,000, really our average between clients is usually 4 to 5,000 for ad spend, because the cost, specifically for decks, are just really expensive. If you're trying to rank for deck builder, we've seen it be 40 or more per click. So you want to make sure you have enough budget, because if you're going in there with a tiny budget like 1,000 or 1,500, you're going to spend your budget extremely fast, and then the ads are going to shut off. And there's no point in running something like that without giving you enough at bats to close leads, basically. You don't want to have this tiny little budget and you get a really small amount of leads, and then can't close enough to make it worth the investment. So you got to make sure you come in here prepared. And that's why I always say, once you get a little bit bigger, at least 1 million is when, that putting that money aside is, more doable. Okay. So I want to talk about Facebook or meta ads. And I think somebody had a question about that in the beginning. I mentioned Neil Patel. I follow a lot of his stuff because he's always got great research. But what he said, he did another study. So he said for a business that's selling B2C, like I'm assuming everyone on here is, if the ticket price is 10,000 or more, someone needs to see your business roughly 23 times before they work with you. So it used to be like seven. It used to be the rule of seven. They need to see your brand seven times, but now everybody's just inundated with ads. Every three posts is an ad on Facebook and Instagram. You see ads everywhere you go. So now it's 23 times is what he's saying. And this is really, really important to know because that piece there can affect all of your marketing. Because if somebody needs to see your brand 23 times before they even know about you or anything about you, you can start to kind of connect the dots for why maybe Google pay per click isn't working, because Google SEO, pay per click, those are the bottom of funnel leads. Those are people who are like, hey, I need a deck builder, a fence company. Let me go find one. When they get to that point, you're in a much better case if people have seen your company somewhere else and they kind of know about you. Like um, if they've heard of you before and kind of have a good image of you in their head, that's going to make it easier to close or get a lead for all those different options. So with meta ads, this is a huge piece of it. A lot of people just have well, I'll get to that in the next slide. Really, they're great for branding, in general. If you're not running meta ads well, and why we see a lot of twos is because you're not running them properly. You're saying, you're kind of just going straight for the sale. You're not warming them up and, um, letting them know about you. You're just saying like, hey, here's this deal, come and buy from me. But you want to use them for not just that. That can be used, but it's not something you want to jump straight to it because it's, people aren't going to be used to you. They don't know who you are. But with meta ads, they are infinitely scalable. They are a way to set yourself apart, and really showcase who you are, that kind of thing. And I'll get into more specifics on this. So the pros and cons, you can be precise with your targeting. You can run them, where you want to go. Pretty much endless reach. You can run them wherever you need to. In general, they're usually quite a bit cheaper than, say, Google pay-per-click ads. Um, Absolutely, a big game changer is going to be retargeting. So I'm going to show you kind of how you can do that here and give you a system for, what seems to work, what tends to work better. And really, they're easier to manage than pay-per-click. Google pay-per-click are just really tough to understand everything. But the cons, if you compare Google to Facebook ads, even in showing the strategies I'm going to talk to you about in a second, general, they're going to be lower quality leads. And the main reason is you're going after them with Google, they're coming after you. So you're showing an ad and trying to get them to click on it, but they're there to waste time. They're not there to find you. So you're trying to show them things that they like so that, they get to know you and hopefully buy from you. You have to be, and this is really a rule of thumb for everything, but especially Facebook ads. If you have a very bad sales system or you just don't pick up calls very quickly, or you end up calling them back hours later or even an hour later or days, whatever, it's going to be a problem and a big one. So you need to make sure whenever those leads are coming in, you have someone that's reaching out immediately or have some kind of software to, AI to help do that. But you need to reach out immediately. Also, the intent, it's just lower intent because people are not there to find you. You're just kind of going after them. All right. So, some different reasons of why typically see them fail. Not using video, like video is definitely going to be king. You want to make sure you have those good, high quality videos. And that's just what people like. They want to see a video. You don't want to use generic stock photos. If you're running Facebook ads with generic stock photos, like just don't even bother. Don't do that. Make sure you have, videos, but at least, you want to have some really high quality photos in there too. Um, the lead form ads. So this is when somebody reaches out and they click on your ad, and then they just have a form in Facebook. Although you will get more leads for sure, it'll look great, but you'll start to see that those quality of leads are much lower because it's just too easy. It's just people are filling it out. So, just filling it out and moving on. And, you know, it's just they don't have much buy-in basically. Retargeting. So this is absolutely critical. If you're not using meta ads to retarget, you're really going to be missing out because the great thing about meta ads is you can retarget them. So if they watch your video entirely, then you can then target them with additional videos. You can, if somebody goes to your website, your social media pages, you can retarget them that way. Um, that's a huge piece. I'll talk about that more in a second. If you're not using it for branding, you want people to understand your brand and run ads for that. Website experience. So what we prefer to do is create custom landing pages for Facebook ads versus the website for the same reason as pay per click. Bad reviews. So at the end of the day, Facebook ads, you're trying to get someone to come to you, but more than likely they're, if they're going to spend 50,000 on a new deck, they're going to want to know more about your company. They're going to Google you and find the reviews. So you want to make sure you look good online. The website looks good. That's all part of it. Or you just have the wrong targeting. You're going after the wrong person. All right. So this is a really game changing strategy and best practice what we see. It's not easy and it's way harder than just throwing up an ad that says 20% off and running it right now. What you want to do is run different types of ads to get people used to. You already know 23 times is what they need to see. So you can use these different types of ads to show them stuff, but also work them down the funnel. So what we do, this is actually a brand new strategy that we're going to be rolling out. Plan is this month, but definitely beginning in January at the latest. But our new Facebook ad strategy is going to require getting actual custom video of clients when they're at their office. So what we will do is hire a local videographer, find somebody that can come out to the office and interview the owner, maybe talk to the teams, go through the showroom, show off the trucks, anything that's unique to you, having that footage to show about the company. So using that footage, we're going to create these types of ads. So top of funnel, this is like the very beginning. You just trying to get people's attention, something that shows that's interesting to them. You want to build trust, show your expertise. So this might be something like before and afters or talking about a common problem that people have that requires them to have a fence or a deck. You try to get emotional tied to it. If you can get emotional reaction to it, that's always going to be best. So that's what you're doing in that top of funnel, really just getting people to know, and you want to find something that gets people to click on it and show some kind of interest. Watch the whole video, because if they watch the whole video, then you can retarget them and they have some level of interest. That's when it comes into the middle of funnel. So if they show some kind of interest in those types of videos, that's when you're going to want to use middle of funnel ads. Something like this could be educational stuff, maybe a guide on decking or fencing materials, different design considerations. You could explain your build process and everything that's involved, pros and cons of materials, what's best, things like that. That's going to be kind of that next phase. And then the bottom of funnel is people that are going even further past that. So bottom of funnel would be someone, the objective would be to get someone to actually reach out and contact you. They can contact you through all of these options, and these ads will go to a landing page where they can reach out. That's a big key there, because if you remember me talking about the meta forms, that makes it very easy for them to just put in their information, click submit. When you have a nice landing page, it gives you some more control of the situation, but also makes it harder. Have them have some skin in the game and make it a little bit more difficult, because if you do and they still fill it out, they're a little bit more committed than somebody else. But those bottom of funnel leads, this is where you want to really show, you can show things like, the origin story of the business, like the owner talking about it, so they can really get behind the scenes, look into that. Case studies are an excellent job, showing, if you can interview customers, that's perfect. But showing off your testimonials, people that have had a good experience with you. And then you can also do kind of seasonal offers. So, right now is a good time to maybe run an ad that says, maybe you offer a discount for the winter because you're trying to get people to book and get them ready for spring, because when spring hits, everybody's going to be calling. So running some kind of thing there to help with that is a big deal. But as you can see here, this is kind of what you want to do to really build that audience and show them things based off of their commitment and then retarget them. So you don't want to just show one ad that says, "Hey, seasonal winter discount." You want to work it through. So there's a lot of ways to run meta ads, but this is like a whole new system that we're going to be rolling out. But these are a great way to target people in that regard. All right, social media. If you remember my beginning slide, it's going to be the thing that gets the least amount of leads. It's not going to be a consistent lead generator. It's more to stay top of mind and get kind of insights into the company. If you can have somebody in-house, that's always going to be better because they can get videos and stuff that are specific to you versus, say, an agency. But I typically say around 3 million and try to do video content. Get somebody that can create some really good high quality video, and that's going to look better on social media versus just all pictures. Pros, it's inexpensive. It's not hard as long as you're doing it in-house. I mean, if you hire somebody, it's going to get pricier, but it just stays top of mind and people want to see before they work with you. There's a good chance they're going to check out social media, see what's on there. So having some kind of content's a good idea. Great way to showcase off your work and have a kind of a gallery of everything. Gives you that inside look of the business, builds trust. Cons is it's just really hard to gauge ROI. You know, people aren't going to social media and then reaching out directly from there. They'll go to your website and things like that. So it's hard to track it specifically. And it's just not overall a lot of leads, and frankly, just very requires a lot of consistency, and it's hard to, you know, stick with. Okay, so we're talking about all these individual types of marketing, all these things that are, you know, cool and I guess a little bit more sexy than what we're about to be talking about here, and something that tends to be ignored by some contractors, frankly. But no matter how good your marketing is, if you don't have somebody to close the leads or that sales process, it's going to cause problems regardless. So this is the problem. So leads that are responded within 15 minutes are 21 times more likely to convert versus leads responded to after 30 plus minutes. So if you're not responding to leads very quickly, it's going to cause a lot of issues. Leads that are not followed up within 15 minutes are going to go cold. So that's why that 5 minutes, I mean, really 2 minutes or immediately is what you want to be doing. 78% of customers choose a company that responds first. We're all, you know, we're all just impatient. We all have Amazon where we get everything immediately. I'm absolutely guilty of this. So if somebody's just taking forever, I just get impatient. And I want to work with somebody and get my job fixed so I can move on to the next thing. So you want to make sure you are that company that's picking up fast. We see that very often. Well, not very often. We do see it where if that sales process isn't dialed in, the leads that we generate, if they're not being picked up or they're being responded to late, it might look like the leads are just not great or whatever, but you just never really know unless you pick it up immediately, because that's what most people are going to want. On average, there's a study that said that businesses take 47 hours to respond to a new lead. If that's you, you got to fix that. I'll show some solutions to that here in a second. And then not only is it important to reach out quickly, but you got to follow up. I mean, everybody on this call, if you're involved in any kind of sales process, you know, it's very rare for that thing to just close. You know, usually they're getting another quote, so you got to follow up with them or just whatever. Life gets in the way and that kind of thing. So if you're not following up, and a lot more times than most people do, you know, a lot of times I'll see like twice, you know, 2 follow-ups. Most people are going to take a lot more than that. So you want to make sure you're doing that so you're not wasting those leads either. Here's some solutions. You absolutely, I get it. It depends on what size you are. You know, if you're just getting started out, you're sub 500, it can be tough to afford an answering service or a team member. I personally like answering services. We use a company called Jill's Office, or that's who we recommend just because a lot of our clients use it. They're not the cheapest option out there. I know that there's AI and stuff out there, and Frankly, we're working on some stuff of that internally anyways, but it's hard to beat a service like that where you have really real people that are having good conversations. They sound good on the phone, they're friendly, things like that. Um, Having an answering service is absolutely crucial. And that's kind of the same thing as like a website. It's, it's part of the foundation. There's no point in doing all these types of marketing if you can't handle the leads. So having an answering service or some kind of sales system is really important. Marketing automation. So we do this with our internal ads. If somebody fills out a form, sending out a message to them, to have that conversation with them, to try to warm up the lead is something that can work. Right now, we're working on a very, very custom piece of AI that will text and have all the communications with um, our clients' leads. It's very tough to do, and we just brought in a specialist to help us with that. But the ability to do that, um, anything to get that speed to lead and have that conversation quick is really important. But unless you have good AI, it's going to be hard to have an actual conversation where they're comfortable talking. So um, automation is better than nothing, but you still ideally have someone that's going to talk to them. Um, and then automating the follow up. So making sure if that lead goes cold or they're not responding, don't just give up. Being able to reach back out. If you have a salesperson to follow up, you can do automated follow ups too with your CRM, depending on what you use. But communicating in that way, and also people like text messaging, so communicating is with text is important. Okay, so this is the timeline, just in case anybody was curious, since we already went through all this stuff. 0 to 5,000, the Google business profile and some kind of website, some basic social media. The 500 to a million is the website, professional website SEO. 1 to 2, that's when you have the Google ads. 2 to 3, Facebook ads. 3+, that's when you start to get more serious about social media. So that's, again, this is, I've spoken to $20 million deck builders that don't even have a website that's mobile friendly. So I know this is not the only way, but we're all here to, trying to learn about digital marketing. And over all the years, this is what we typically see as the best system. SEO through the website, all of that stuff, that's going to be the most affordable. You don't have to pay Google for the ad spend. That's going to be where most of the leads come from. When you need more leads, that's when you can kind of step it up to Google ads and Facebook ads, social media, to really enhance it and do even more. There's always a direct correlation between the companies that have the most reviews in an area compared to the ones that don't. The ones that have the most reviews that dominate, they're going to get more leads. So I would absolutely, it would be at the very top of my list. If you could do anything to really help the business and, get ahead, dominating on reviews is absolutely crucial, especially if you want, a common example would be like if you're doing decks and you're building those big projects, or you like those bigger projects, the 50, 100+ type jobs, those people that pay for value, they're going to want to go for the company that has the most reviews, the most proven results, because they don't want to waste their time. If they have money, they want something done right. They don't want it to be a pain because they can afford it. They're not looking for just the cheapest price. Schema markup, that's a good idea too. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. Schema markup is important for SEO too. That's a good point. So next thing, you have your list there. I wanted you to kind of brain dump, but next I want to say your top action items. So putting in order so you have a plan of what you need to do to move the needle forward the best. So my opinion, if you don't have a good website, you don't have good SEO, or your Google listing is in the wrong area, I would absolutely recommend getting that done and getting reviews, taking care of that SEO stuff, because that should be in its best possible shape, regardless, because that's where most people go. From there, that's when you can start talking about the ads and things like that. But put in the top action items, what you want to focus on, and make sure they're in order, because you want to take this list, this document, and be able to have a list of things you can do to set yourself up. Right now, we're at such a great time of the year. Getting these things in order before the spring season hits. We do have some time. Full disclosure, doing this even earlier is even better. As soon as it starts slowing down is when I like to really take care of SEO, but we're still pretty early. We're not in the new year yet. So put in those top action items. All right. So got us something that's in that workbook. One click. So complete service areas, update service pages, more information schema. Okay. So in that workbook, if you copied it, there should be a QR code in there as well. But we created a whole planner for the new year too. It's too much to just go through the webinar, so I wanted to show it to you at the end so you could focus on it after. But this is a really cool document because it'll allow you to get down to the very, very detail of what you need. So you can see here, say you wanted to hit $1 million, that means 83 a month. Your average ticket is 20,000, you close at 30%. This will say you need to have this many service calls every month to hit your goal. And if you know the leads that turn into an estimate, say it was 50% or whatever that is, then it'll show you how many leads you need for the month to hit your goal. So you can play around with these numbers and see exactly what it takes. If you're not really sure, maybe be on the more conservative side. But having this number is a way to go after that goal and be calculated about it instead of just guessing. So I strongly urge you to look at these and play around to see what is needed. Look at your past years to see what you got. If it's dramatically lower, you got to make some changes and increase things. Because you want to make sure that whatever your goal is, the marketing reflects that goal, not what you did last year. So like the Small Business Administration, I think they say like 5 to 12% or something like that for marketing of revenue. So if you're sitting there at 1 or 2% and you want to hit a bigger number next year, that's how you can increase it to help get those results. And this whole thing will show you that. This is also part of it too. So you can see what your marketing budget is. So if you say it was 6%, 5 to 12, you can kind of play around with that. Then you'll know how much you have to allocate and then what you'll need and what types of marketing you can do. So we put it for online, offline. So if you're doing offline stuff, repeat business, you'll be able to see what should be spent in the year to make up for that. So this will actually break it down to know what you can spend in each area and what makes the most sense for that. So these two combined are a really big game changer. So you know exactly what you can afford, what makes sense. You're not overextending yourself, or you're not undercutting yourself either. Because frankly, if you're trying to have a big goal and you're spending a very small amount on marketing, that's going to be problematic. You're not going to get the same results as you could. And this is again for offline and online. So it's everything you're doing to get new business. So be sure to scan that QR code. It is in the workbook too. This time of year is fantastic. I'm glad everyone's thinking about this and is going on here. You're already doing a lot better than most people just by coming on the webinar and thinking about this. So right now, you want to continue that. You want to get things in order. So if you do have any questions about your business specifically, if you want to have a website audit, so we can actually go in and do a very extensive audit of your website, your SEO, your Google ads, Facebook ads, everything to see where you're currently standing and where the holes might be. We can do that for you. It's a free audit. There's no charge for it, but they are extensive. If you are interested in that, just put a 1 in the chat. And then got a couple there. So if you want that, put a 1 in the chat, and Matilde will reach out to you, and she'll send a message directly to you. So she'll actually send you a DM. I think will probably be the best. There's a lot of ones on here, so it might take her a little while. Maybe just put your business and business website and your personal phone number. Just put that or send it directly to Matilde as a direct message. And that way she can make sure we don't miss anybody here.
And if I may, Alex, yeah, if you could please DM me your that information that Alex mentioned, that would be very, very helpful. And that way I can get to those messages quicker. And I'm also going to post the link to schedule a quick discovery call as well. Just
Yeah, you can also do that too. That's a good point. Yeah, if you wanted to schedule or hop on the calendar, she can put the thing in there. But yeah, this will give you a lot of clarity to see what is missing. Like I said, glad everyone's thinking about this now to kind of prepare themselves. Um, the spring will be here before we know it. The holidays are going to fly by. So, in most areas, depending on how cold it is, it's going to, some people don't really have much of an off season if you're in warmer climates. But, if you're like us in Maryland, it gets cold this time of year, so people tend to not care about being out on their deck. So it tends to really pick back up in March.